So, Jerry, I know first thing about Jerry, and I'm probably the only person in the world that calls him Jer. Everybody calls him JW, but um, I was trying to figure out how to introduce him because there's too much to say, and he's not going to want me to say anything. So I'm going to have to. It's a fine line with you, Jerry. So I'm going to start off before we get to Jerry, telling you a quick story of how I met Jerry to prove that Jerry and I have both. Jerry had been around a little longer than me, but it was in the early 90s, and I hadn't written my book yet, but it came out in 94. And I had heard about this guy up in Sacramento City College who was already developing a legendary status. And I don't know how it happened, Jerry. We'll have to figure that out one day. But I went up there to spend 3 days with Sac City baseball, and I did some stuff with the softball as well. I hadn't written my book yet, but it was all mental training basically. And I show up to Jerry's house, and it was for the weekend, and I figured I was going to be staying at some hotel or somewhere. And I get to his front door, and we start chatting, and I'm like, okay, where am I? Where are you putting me up? He's like, oh no, you're staying here. And I knew I was in for a treat getting to know Jerry because I hadn't known him yet, but it was one of those experiences in life I look back on that was incredibly impactful, just being around him, his program, his culture. Um, so Jerry, thank you for doing this. And I know you don't want me to say too much, but I just will say this, that, um, as Donegal said, there's just so much. The word I think about with Jerry is just insight. He's got insight and he's got feel, and he's a huge nuance guy. And so please know that if you have any questions, feel free to go into the nuances. So what we're going to do, as we did before we get started here, is please, if you have a question, throw in the chat room. I would also say this: if you turn your video on, if you have a question, just turn your video on so you come to the front page, and then we can just let you ask the question overtly, and then you can maybe have some dialogue. So keep that in mind. Jared, what we've been doing is just sort of a little quick overview, a little background, anything you want to talk about, and then we'll open it up.
No, nothing really. Just answer any questions people have, and it's really nice to be here on what is this, Black Friday, and to be with baseball guys talking baseball. That's what I like to do.
Beautiful. Okay, so with that, we'll open up the questions. And Jerry, I know your forte is so many things, catching, but what are some of the other topics that, I know you'll talk about anything, but are there some certain topics more recently that you've been talking about?
Well, interesting hearing Donegal talk and you talk, and Ken Revisa's name came up a lot, and I happened to write a blog today. I was thinking about Ken, but Ken and I were very close, and we had involvement in the early 80s at Sac City, and then later with the Dodgers, and then with two Olympic teams, and then Ken had been with the Cubs, and now I'm back with the Cubs. So I thought, geez, I'm back with the Cubs, and Ken played an integral part in their World Series championship because he and Joe Madden are so close, both when he was with the Angels and then with the Cubs and with Tampa Bay, and so I did write something today about Ken. Maybe I should read that.
Would you? I think that'd
I
be
will. I have to bring it up on my computer, and I do have it somewhere here if I can get to it.
awesome.
And I'll just read it. It was Ken Revisa. Coming back to the Cubs makes me think about Ken Revisa, who was Joe Madden's mental skill coach with Tampa Bay, the Cubs, and the Angels. Along with Harvey Dorfman and Carl Keel, Ken was a pioneer of sports psychology, mental skills in Major League Baseball. In the early days, it was hidden in the darkest recesses of the clubhouse. If you were seen talking to the sports psychologist, there was something wrong with you. Most conversations were in private. Now it's on the forefront relative to achieving peak performance. Every major league team has a whole mental skills department. It's expanded to include mental health issues as well. We can thank Ken for that, not only in professional baseball, but also in most colleges. In the day, he mentored the top college programs like Texas and Fullerton with Augie Garrido, Long Beach State, and Fullerton with Dave Snow, and UCLA with John Savage, to name a few. On the pro side, guys like Andy McKay with the Mariners and Doug Chadwick with the Rockies are two of the many still carrying the torch. I started working with Ken in the early 80s at Sacramento City College and remained close friends till his death. In 2018, Ken and his partner Tom Hansen wrote the seminal books on mental skills for baseball. heads up baseball, playing the game one pitch at a time, and heads up baseball, playing the game one pitch at a time 2.0. Ken has helped thousands of athletes become the best version of themselves. He separated himself from the field by developing a specific process that each athlete could apply in their own way. I used to rag Ken by telling him that baseball is 95% physical and 5% mental. His response was, Weinstein, the 5% mental controls the 95% physical. Truer words have never been spoken. He was the master of teaching athletes how to control the controllables. My favorite Revisa retort, this is a paraphrase, to a struggling player who complained about not being 100% was, do you suck so bad that you have to feel good to play good? It's about getting 100% out of whatever you have on a given day. Ken is sorely missed. Okay, that's that was today's blog.
Well, I loved every word of it because we both know that Ken was an incredible human being. And just because I'll share a story because I know how much you appreciate Ken. It was around the same time I came to Sac City, and well, this proves how long ago it was. I called Ken through the phone book, and his home number was listed in the phone book. So for those of you that are, not at least 30 years old, there was something called a phone. Anyway, so I called Ken from the white pages. Could not believe he answered the phone, first of all. Um, and I told him, I said, look, I'm just starting to get into this field. I'm writing a book. I would love to meet up with you, and which is a lesson for everybody here, that it doesn't matter who the person is, reach out and ask. And coaches love helping. So anyway, I think within a few days, I was down at Ken's house. He invited me down to his house. I remember walking in front of his old place, I think near Hermosa and Redondo, and we took a walk near the ocean. And I just couldn't believe like this man was so interested in helping, and that he invited a stranger down to his place. So again, it's a cool reminder of what kind of person Ken was, but also I think it's a good reminder of being interested and asking questions and not being afraid to reach out to people. So yeah, it's one of my fond memories. And I went to his retirement party. It was a very special deal. And Ken, yeah, I consider Ken to be, as we all do, an incredible mentor. So yeah, thanks for sharing, Jerry.
Well, that's pretty typical Ken stuff. I mean, and that reminds me of Alan Jaeger telling me when I wrote a book that he says, you do remember, you're smiling, so I know you remember this, but this is just for everybody listening. I wrote a catching book over a number of years, riding buses through the minor leagues, and Alan calls me and says, "Hey, pretty good." He says, "You have a website?" I said, "Nah." He says, "Do you tweet?" I said, "Tweet? What are you talking about?" And he said, "Oh, you're a dinosaur." I says, "Well, there's no debate on that one." And so he set me up, and pretty soon I'm putting little tidbits out on the book. And I'm a very bad marketer. I didn't care if I sold any books. I wanted to get the information out there because I'm about making the game better. My theory has always been that a high sea floats all the boats. And so pretty soon I'm getting questions on a lot of different things, and I'm writing answers. And I mean, to this day, I get emails from people on a daily basis, and I answer all my emails every day, or my, I guess, DMs or whatever, the stuff that comes toward me, and people ask me questions on everything. So I started writing more and more stuff. I started getting more and more positive feedback. And the next thing I know, I've got like 88,000 followers on Twitter. I'm no longer the coach anymore. Oh, you're the Twitter guy. And so I'm the Twitter guy.
Well, I'll have to add one piece to the story because I remember the moment it happened. I was on my bed in Dallas at the ABCA show, and you reached out to me and you said, "All right, what is this Twitter stuff?" And you just wrote your book. And I actually said to you, I said, "Jerry, look, here's the good news," because you didn't want to go on it because you were worried about extra work, right? I said, "This is how I sold you." I don't know if you remember this. I said, "Jerry, look, all you have to do is you can tweet and you don't do another thing. You can put out one tweet a day and your work is done." And you go, "Really? I don't have to do it?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And that was my selling point too, is so that you didn't have to worry about. Now I'm sure you love the exchanges, but
Well, I don't know if I love it, but I'm somewhat addicted. At night I have to think while I'm in bed. Well, I can't fall asleep until I formulate my tweet for the next day, and so, and now I have access to so much video, and and so much information, some of it useful, some of it not useful. I mean, I've gotten as many as a million responses to certain tweets. I said, this is ridiculous. People wasting their time doing that. And now I'm spending my time on Twitter or TikTok or something looking for stuff because there's so much good information out there, and especially in the catching community. It's not so competitive and adversarial as say hitting is a joke. Those guys they're after one another's throats, and the catching guys we're pretty close, and we want to get good information out there, and there's a lot of good information out there. Again, you have to have a filter, and with anything, whether it's on social media or so-called experts or gurus that say, hey, this is this and this is that. Yeah, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. You got to figure it out for yourself.
Yeah. All right, well, let's open it up. Anybody have some questions for the professor? So we got TJ checking in. Thank you, TJ. TJ, do you want to turn your camera on, then you'll come to the front page and you can actually do this in real time. Otherwise, I'll just ask the question for you. Do we see a T? There you are, TJ.
Yeah, sure. Just driving right now. But yeah, I was just curious if you had any insight into preparing hitters pre-game. I know that there's been a lot of, machine work that a lot of guys are doing, that I've seen recently. Guys, like to prepare off the machine, or, some guys like to just do traditional BP, but I'm just curious if you have any thoughts towards that. That's really all I had.
Yeah, I do. As a matter of fact, shocker. I think one of the things, very individualized. You have to find out what works for each individual. And it's not necessarily based on them going 3 for 3. It's based on them, their timing, being on time, swing, no swing decisions, and putting good swings on their pitches, not necessarily the outcome and the results, because you're not in charge of that. But I think one of the biggest things one of the big mistakes we make in today's game is our BP and our practice, all our practice in general, is not random enough. It's too blocky. You put a machine on and you're getting all night. I don't care if it's 90, 95. They're all fastballs. They're going to be all fastballs, and they're all in the same spot. And so I think that for me, I would save my money till I could get a programmable machine so that I can make it a little bit more random, and then just find out what works for everybody. I think some guys need feel-good BP on certain days. Some guys need to be challenged. I think warming up, Lauren probably understands this better than anybody there, that you have to warm up your central nervous system and your eyes to get ready for the speed of the game. But you also have to get ready for the unpredictably chaotic nature and randomness of the game. And so random, unpredictable practice. Anybody can identify pitches if they know what's coming on every pitch. The game, that's just not the game. It doesn't happen that way. That guy on the mound, he gets a vote, and he's not voting the same way as you vote.
Awesome. We got another question from McCoy. McCoy, I see you on the home page. Do you want to turn your camera on, or I can ask the question for you in case you are? Okay, I'll ask it for you. Jer, he says, what advice do you give to your pitchers to make it easier for your catchers in game?
Well, I think our job as catchers is to make it easier for the pitchers. I don't want, it's not about me, it's about them. And so my priority is to help the pitchers do what they need to do to be the best version of themselves. And don't bounce balls in the dirt and hit my target every time. That's how you can do it. That's a real simple question. It's just not a realistic one. It just doesn't happen that way. The best target hitters in the world miss their target by anywhere from 10 to 13 pitches in the big leagues. So I don't, that's not even something that I address in, I don't, hey, QA had 3 pass balls today. God damn, you got to hit your target. Hey, we got to do a better job of, again, that gets back to random, unscripted, unpredictable game speed, chaotic type practice, because you got to assume that you can't get so comfortable back there. They expect them to just throw the ball right in your mitt, and your mitt catches the ball. It just doesn't happen that way. So I'm not trying to be a wise guy, but I just that's just not a consideration for me. The one thing, however, I will say, if you want to make it easy, especially in the running game, have a 1-2 to 1-3 leg and be able to vary your tempo relative to your hold times. I think that's the one thing that you can do that will help your catchers, especially, and your team controlling the running game.
I love it. Hit your target and don't bounce the balls. Okay, Greg, you are on the home page. Hand up. Fire away, buddy. You're muted. You're on mute, Greg.
There we go. Hey, thanks, you guys. Coach, working with catchers, I know with hitters, we try to build really solid mental pre-pitch routines. What are your thoughts as far as, because we want our catchers to be the best receivers they catch the ball on each pitch, building a mental pre-pitch routine with breathing for them?
I'm going to be honest with you. I just, we just, we just practice at high speed and over speed and very random and basically what I want to be certainly from a visual standpoint, I want to be as relaxed visually as I can be and not hyper focused on and so fine focused that I don't track the ball. It's like driving down the road and you have those reflectors down there. You don't look at every reflector. You look about 200 feet up the road there to see where you're going. It's the same thing about having broad enough focus. I think that guys do get tense when they're they're overmatched. Like this guy, the movement that this guy's got way too much velocity and movement. I'm not prepared to catch that pitch. Well, I'm going to be pretty tense in that situation because I might be playing dodgeball back there. And so I think just building their skill level is going to put them in a more relaxed, reactive situation. And again, it gets back to preparation, and the preparation piece has got to be. I think Donegal said, "Dirty practice, clean game," and that dirty practice is overspeed and chaotic nature and stuff like that. But also, it's not a game of perfect. I think a lot of guys that get stressed back there, they're trying to be perfect players, and it's just not a game of perfect. And you just got to be able to separate and move on to the next pitch and go pitch by pitch. I don't think that quite. I don't have a breathing technique. I just want to make sure that my eyes are relaxed and I can track the ball and that I think from a technique standpoint, glove load is important, and you're seeing catchers load their glove to the ground. We like kind of a relaxed pancake glove load, and to be able to stay down there as long as we can, and so we can get as much information from ball flight as we can. It's kind of a double-edged sword when you're catching because you call the pitch and you call the location. So if you get over reliant on that guy getting to that location and all of a sudden he doesn't hit his target, which most of the time they don't, or you get some late movement, which often now with guys that can manipulate the ball, or you get some unexpected movement where a guy's going to throw a fastball with some run and all of a sudden he comes around the ball and it's got cut. And so we try and build into our practice paradigm that, balls that are expected to move in a certain way, move in a different way. It's almost like I'm not going to give you a signal. You just throw what you want, and whether it's breaking ball or fastball, just kind of use those low impact balls so you don't kill anybody.
Jer, I have a follow-up from something you said earlier that I think is really valuable would be to talk a little bit more about the pitcher-catcher relationship from a previous question, and just some of the things that you have found, helpful. Obviously, that relationship is vital, but some of the things that you've witnessed over the years or you've utilized over the years to make that relationship better.
Well, I think it was Donegal. That's kind of where I came on. Someone was talking about servant mentality. I think that's part of it. That hey, when I've got a pitcher that I'm going to catch is throwing a pin, I'm going to catch him. I'm going to catch him like it's the World Series. My job is to help him have the best bullpen he can, whether it's a flat ground. That I have information. It's not just trust. We hear, oh, hey, they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Well, I got news for you, pal. When you throw a finger down there, they got to know that you know what you're doing back there. They don't care. Hey, he likes me. That's great. But he's throwing down a particular pitch that I don't have or I can't execute, that's probably not very good. So you got to have information too. Uh, it, and whether they like you or not, if you're prepared, if you spend the time not playing video games in the locker room and studying videos and the scouting report and also being transparent. Transparency is really important. You got to tell them. You got to tell them what you think. You got to tell them. And again, we are all fallible. This is not a game of perfect. I'm probably the dumbest guy on this. I probably have screwed up more guys than all of these people on here combined. And so I think a certain degree of of uh, uh, fallible, that I am fallible and I'm just doing the best I can, and I always defer to what you feel you need to do on the mound in terms of pitch calling. I much rather the pitches you have confidence in is much better than what is the so-called right pitch. And so I always defer to the pitcher because a pitch thrown with confidence is better than a pitch thrown with doubt. Then also, I try not to get internal during the game as a catcher in terms of, well, you can get your arm up and, you got to do this and that. I'm more into external ball flight cues in terms of how I set up in terms of targets, miss in, aim out, miss out, aim in, miss down, aim up, and miss up, aim out. I try and keep it very simple during the game. Try and, those mound visits, a lot of times they're eyewash, but sometimes you can do some good in terms of certainly giving the guy a break, putting a hand on him and getting him. Someone asked about breathing. I think Greg asked about breathing. Sometimes they just forget to breathe, and they're not in the now. They're thinking about the last pitch, or they're thinking about the result of this pitch instead of being where they need to be for this particular pitch. So I need to get them where I need to have them. And then you need to find their bridge pitch. What is that bridge pitch that brings them back into the zone? Most of the time when guys are screwed up out there, it's bad command. When the what hits the fan, it's 4 straight arm side high fastballs. You got to find a way to get them back in, whether it's a pitch type, a target setup, a vibe, more of a pulsating glove, or whatever you do. How you can change the scenario, the script, how you flip the script. That's the biggest thing is how you manage the ball game. And if you're prepared and they know, self-degradation is not a bad thing. Hey, man, I this is what I think, but I'm going to defer to what you think, and then we'll talk about it in between innings, and maybe the next time you'll defer to me, and when you build confidence. And unfortunately, one of the problems is everybody's concerned about, well, why'd you throw that pitch? Or why did you throw a curveball? You should have thrown a fastball. Well, usually if you really look at it, it's not the pitch, it's the execution of the pitch. It's the location. So now my big focus is on location. You see guys throwing their bullpens in between starts, and what are they doing? They're working on this. They're working on loading this way. They're working on that. Everything is internal. And then in the game, nobody cares what their delivery looks like. They're just concerned with ball flight and the result of the ball flight. That's one. And number two, that you can do everything right and throw a perfect pitch and it gets whacked. And you can overhang a breaking ball and it gets swung through or popped up. So you got to understand that. And I think that there's a lot of moving parts to that process, and there's a lot of elements that go into it. Not only the pitch you call, but how you catch the pitch, or how you block balls, and where the umpire has confidence in your ability to keep the ball off them, so they'll hang in longer and see the pitches better. There's a lot of you talked about nuances before. That's the most nuanced situation there is, and it's the most impactful on winning and losing. Over the course of a season, you take this year, Patrick Bailey was head and shoulders the best thrower and the best receiver or framer in baseball. And he was like 26 runs above the average guy in baseball. What does that mean? Well, 26 runs translates into 3 or 4 big league wins. A big league win is worth about $9 million. So just on his receiving alone over the average guy, he was $36 million better than that guy. Because over the course of a season, 162 games, you're looking at probably 28 or 29 pitches a game that are in that ball range or that shadow zone, or 50-50 pitches. Over the course of a season, you're looking at 4,700 pitches. Each one has a run value depending upon the situation. So the guy that gets more of those shadow pitches, or 50 pitches called strikes, more value is. He has the throwing piece is about 4 or 5 runs, and the blocking piece is about 2 or 3 runs. So you can see the receiving piece is 3 to 4 times more important than anything else. That's why you're seeing guys down on a knee, because that's a high priority environment.
And you mentioned 4 wins a year. How many teams miss out the playoffs by 1 game every year?
No question. You take one year LaCroix, and this was before everybody started realizing the value of saving runs by receiving. And LaCroix was a plus 52, and Ryan Dummett was a minus 46. So, but if you change teams, if Ryan came over to LaCroix's team and LaCroix came over to Ryan's, each of those teams would have won or lost 10 or more games. You don't think that makes a difference? And I don't mean to denigrate Ryan Dummett, because he was a big league catcher and he could really hit. Just he had not a great receiving year.
Love it. Thanks, Jerry. I got a question. Before I just want to add one other thing too, which is you basically stated it in a few different ways, but I also love the word communication, which is basically a lot of what you said, Jerry, which is that pitcher and catcher has to have a great, I would say, degree of communication. Yeah.
Well, let me just interject one thing. I think transparency is critical. And one of the first talks I have, that when we break spring training and get to the city, I said, we will have a good locker room. This will be a good team when you guys tell one another what you need to hear rather than what you want to hear. And I think, I don't know, I think Jim Leland said it earlier this year. He says, you tell them what they don't want to hear, and they hate you for 24 hours. You lie to them and they hate you forever. And so I'm not talking about ripping guys and making them feel bad and being mean. I'm just talking about telling them what you think. And you know what? And this is what I think. I don't know if I'm right or wrong, but this is what I think. And then it's their choice to do what they think is best for them.
I had I don't know if it was a fortune cookie or something a long time ago when I was a kid, and it said, being honest gives the other person an opportunity to be honest back. Thanks, Jared. So from Chris, we have, what are your thoughts on using water bags for training? Hey, Victor Black.
I like the water bags a lot. I like it because I like the deceleration aspect of the water bags. I like the unpredictability of the water bags. And I'm just talking more from a throwing standpoint. I think the deceleration piece is really important to translate energy up the kinetic chain from the middle down and back up through the kinetic chain. And I think that, I think you got to be able to stop good if you're going to be able to accelerate, because if you can't stop well, your body won't allow you to accelerate the way you can accelerate. But I think that's important. I like the water bags because it really engages a lot of muscle fibers and the central nervous system and all the other elements that make up for power and speed.
Perfect. Chris, did you want to follow up with any of that? Is that good? Okay. Jerry, I'm going to selfishly ask a question on what a shock throwing and catching. So the door is wide open. What do you want to, how would you address that?
Let me, and I assume when you talk about throwing, we're talking about throwing runners out. Is that correct?
Sorry. Yeah. Forgive me.
Okay.
Throwing as far as preparation, training, conditioning the arm.
Okay. Well, let's start with the preparation piece of it. Number one, catchers need to throw. Nobody throws more than the catchers. And I think that this is right in your wheelhouse relative to long toss. And a huge part of my program is built on your high lob, long toss, and pull downs. And really one of the things that we start with, it's called a spin ball, I think, and I'm not trying to promote anybody, but Oat Specialties has it, and so does Zan Barksdale. They're kind of like those clean Fuego balls, except they're leather with seams. And I like to throw those when we first start throwing, and I like to start our throwing. And one of the things I do with that is I have a 4-seam one and I have a 2-seam one. And I have the 4-seam, I put take a Sharpie and put a stripe on it. And I want them to be able to see that stripe because we're trying to create backspin as best we can. Now, sometimes you can't do it because the guy has a great jump and the ball's low and away, and it's a breaking ball, and you just got to get rid of the ball. And we're seeing more guys throw from varied arm slots than ever before. But let's come back. So we do our left knee down, and I like the left knee down and just get up and throw with the spin ball because it forces you into positive direction. Now, sometimes the pitch and all those other variables don't allow you to throw with the type of direction you'd like from a catcher standpoint because there are a lot of stuff you can't control, like how quick the pitcher is to the plate, how big a jump the runner had, where the pitch is, what type of pitch it is. So I start there. Then we take our hard ball with a stripe on it, and sometimes I'll go with 2-seam because even though you'd like to get 4-seam, sometimes you don't get 2-seam grip, and you can throw a 2-seam grip with backspin. And the reason we want backspin is because when the ball sinks and runs, it's slower, it covers more distance. We've done tests on it, and it takes longer to get there. So we're trying to create backspin by getting the ball above our hand when we release the ball. And a lot of that is involved with what we do with our trunk and so on and so forth. This is probably a question that we could talk all day on, but I'm going to give you what are those books called?
Cliff Notes.
Cliff Note. I'm going to give you the Cliff Note version of it. All right. So now, and what I like to do is start. And one of the things I do in our early catch play is start with the ball in your glove, because fielding, and I believe this with infielders and outfielders too, because there's two pieces to the throwing puzzle. One is the transfer, and the other is the throw. When we start with the ball in our hand, what do we have? We got our A grip every time. We always have a good grip. When you're making the transfer from glove to hand, you don't always have a good grip. So sometimes you have to adjust the ball. Sometimes you have to throw with a diagonal grip across 2 seams or 4 seams. Sometimes you can adjust it to get to 4 seams. So I like to work ball to glove. So I got ball to glove, the striped ball. We start out probably at 90 feet, just taking our arm for a walk, Allen's term, and then we go out as far as we want on that particular day, playing high lob catch. And how high and how far and how many is based on what your body tells you on a particular day. Listen to your body. Now, we have a lot of wearable technology, and if you have access to that and it's reliable, I highly suggest as a catcher that you use, whether it's a pulse or a arm care product or whatever it happens to be. But I think if you just listen to your arm and you know how your arm feels, that you know. And every day when we get our guys out there, and another thing, we always throw in the office. And the office I say always, whenever possible, when we have the field, we throw from home plate towards second base, and we'll flip around, so the guy in center by second will come back and throw. So we go out and we throw our long toss. And a lot of times, especially where we are in the season, say it's the off season, I'm trying to build arm strength. One of the things that I've interjected into this program is a 10-inch softball with a stripe on it. And so we'll get out to our max distance, and then we pick up the softball. The thing I like about the softball, a little bit of overload. It's bigger, so there's more resistance against the ball. So if you have bad spin, you can see the movements. And over long distance, you're going to see bad spin because distance magnifies spin. If you got a little run, that's why at 90 feet, it's not a good judge of if the guy's got good spin or not, because usually guys have enough velocity to carry the ball on a straight line. We're looking for inline carry, that they have enough arm strength to carry the ball at 90 feet. But when you get out there and start playing long toss, the ball's going to move a lot more, and even more with a softball. So then we get out to our max distance. We start working our way back and do some pull downs where we take that 200-foot throw and compress it into a shorter throw. I don't want to change the effort. I don't want to change the intent. I want effortless effort. I don't want over effort. Again, you have to find your sweet spot, kind of like Goldilocks, not too warm, not too cold, just right. You got to find that sweet spot. You're coming back. We get to behind second base and we try and go like at 130 feet would be our distance, because that's the average distance the ball is going to carry on a throw out at second base, because you're behind home plate and you're not right at the tip of the plate and throwing to second. So we go 130, and then we'll start with the ball in the glove, and we'll take a couple pitches, maybe low and out, up and in, raking the ball, backhand, whatever. Maybe depending upon the guy in that particular day, he's going to do X number. Then we come up to 90 feet. And when we get up to 90 feet, we're going to go athletic catch. And so we're going to run to the right. We're going to run to the left. We're going to backpedal. We're going to run forward, because I want them to be athletes. I think that this is kind of a anti-yip drill, because what we do is very repetitive, and we get into some bad habits. We get to pushing the ball back to the pitcher, especially with a left-hand hitter. Guys get into some away from their athleticism. So we try and spend 5 or more throws, throwing from a lot of different arm slots and different spots. Then we will do a skill level at 90 feet. Might be block and retrieve. It might be pitch outs. It might be picks. It might be bunt plays. It might be home to first double plays. Then we come up to 60 feet and we play quick catch. And this is where we start with a quick exchange, ball out of the glove. And I'm not going to talk. I'll come back and again, you asked me what time it is. I'm kind of telling you how to make the watch here, but there's some throwing things we think are important. So then we do our quick catch, and then usually what we do is we will throw on the diamond, not at game speed, but our footwork will be game speed. So we'll throw low and out to second, up and out to second, within your frame to second, glove side to second. Then we put a left-hand hitter in there, or you have to swing out and throw to second. And then we'll do a pitch out on either side. And some days we'll throw to third base instead of second, or first base, or picks, or whatever. But we just try and keep it fresh and variable, where it doesn't get stale and we're not doing the same old thing. And again, some days guys won't do that extra throwing, or some days guys won't do pull downs, or they may only go out to 150 feet or whatever. So we very much listen to everybody. Some days we'll just get our arms loose and take ground balls at shortstop and turn double plays. So we're getting the ball, changing the direction of the ball from glove to hand. It's very much variable. It's very much designed for the individual. I might have, like, hey, how much you going to throw today? Boom. I might have 4 guys, and you pair up the guys that are not going to throw long or not going to throw at all or whatever, so that we can accommodate the individual needs of each player. But from a general throwing standpoint, just give you a couple things. And I've done this for many, many years. I talked about catching the ball deep and taking the ball up out of the glove. And then I started to really look at the process and the best transfer guys. And if you look at a Baseball Savant, they give you the best transfer guys. And I looked at all the best transfer guys, and none of them catch the ball deep. They all go out and get the ball, and as they're catching the ball out in front, I'm not talking about jabbing where my center of mass moves out there, but they're out in front, because that's what we do. We catch the ball up to the plate. So their first reaction is go get the ball, and as they're catching the ball, they're retreating with their glove, and they're dropping the ball down out of their hand into a supinated hand. While that's happening, I'm trying to get my right foot down as fast as possible, because until I get my right foot down, I'm not in a position to throw. So the right foot down is to create direction. Once I have good direction, then I throw the ball. And again, there's a lot of intermediate processes that go through there in terms of scap load and how I get into external rotation and the relationship of my hand and my elbow. And there's a lot of things that go on. And I'm not saying that I practice going out and getting the ball, but I certainly don't cue guys, hey, catch the ball deep and take the ball up out of the glove. Intuitively, that sounds good. A to B, get it up, get it out. It isn't what happens. It doesn't happen that way. And if you don't trust me, look at the videos. The ball is being separated at the sternum or below, and it's being dropped down into a supinated hand. They're not going in and grabbing it and taking it out. It's kind of like it's a ricochet of changing directions and getting the airborne. Now, in terms of the process, 2 pieces of pop time, which is glove to infielder's glove. One is the transfer, and the other is ball flight. in general, ball flight is 60 to 67%, closer to 67% of the pop time. So now if you're just trying to get rid of the ball and flip it out there and you have no ball velocity, that's a problem. But also, if you take too long, that becomes a problem. So again, we got to find the sweet spot. How do you do it? You time it. You evaluate it. There's a lot of good tools. There's a tool called Pop Time that's really good. It's an app that I use a lot. I'll use Stolen Base app, which is a little bit more sophisticated, takes more time to set up. But we have to evaluate the transfer time and the ball flight time, and then we adjust what? We adjust the intent. We turn the intent down, we turn the intent up. It doesn't do any good to get the ball down there in 2.3 seconds, accurate every time, because they're always safe. You're just building a group of slow throwers, and guys are going to be safe all the time. And so, again, find that sweet spot between transfer and release. And then, as much as you can, especially with the spin balls, force those guys to pay attention to the spin, especially the stripe on the ball. And their goal is to have backspin so they have carry. Sometimes you can't do it. You see, again, we talked about Patrick Bailey, and Patrick Bailey is the new is the new catcher. He throws from a low slot. His arm is in the same plane as his shoulders, and his hands in the same plane as shoulders. A lot of the other guys, their upper arms in the same plane as the rotation of the shoulders, but their hand is slightly above, so the ball's above their hand, so they can create backspin. But again, sometimes you have no choice. You got to throw from a lower slot because of where the pitch is and what kind of jump the runner had. And even if the guy has a great jump, your job is to make it close. If you make it close and the guy's safe, the next time he gets on first base, he's going to think twice. Man, I had a great jump last time. That was a close play. So what happens? He doesn't run. He's working for the perfect jump. You buy a couple pitches in the interim. Maybe you get a ground ball double play. All right. That anything else on throwing? I got a lot of other stuff, but I don't think we got time for my stuff.
Well, what I would do is, well, if I can make one comment, the fact is I threw out a teaser about throwing, and I just hope everybody understands the breadth and depth of what it goes in every day from your perspective for a catcher just to prepare his arm. And so I just thought, no, look, I would say this too. Jerry, your book, I want to make sure I have it the right one because you have a second edition. Complete Handbook of Coaching Catchers, correct?
Alan, I am the worst. I am the worst promoter. Okay, that's it. Yeah, that's the second. That's Tony Walters on the front. You know what I did is it took me 5 years to write it, and then it was outdated by the time it was printed, and then I had to go back during COVID and kind of put in some of the new tag stuff and the one knee stuff, and so I added about 60 pages of different stances, and also the new catching rules relative to professional baseball, the setups and stuff like that.
Well, just make sure for anybody interested in all things catching, and you can go to Jerry. Your website is?
Yeah, good question. I think it's WeinsteinBaseball.com.
You know what? If you Google Jerry Weinstein with catching or baseball, it will come up. And at J1 Catching, correct, on Twitter?
JW, small, lowercase ON, and large case catching.
Jer, thank you, by the way, for doing this. It means a lot to me, as you know, with our history and all that. And I know it always impacts me, and I know you impacted everybody here. And so, again, thank you for doing this. And please feel free to reach out to Jerry. The analogy I used earlier with reaching out to Ken Ravisa. I'm not saying Jerry's going to invite you to his house for sure, but you get the drift. Jerry is very.
I will say one thing, Alan.
Yeah.
If anybody has I get all kinds of most of it through Twitter. Guys will ask me questions, and I always respond if I can. And so if you have any questions on anything, obviously you can see I like to talk about baseball, and I have a passion for what I do, and at 81 it's payback time. So anything I can do to help you or your players, I'd be glad to do it. And even, evaluating video and stuff like that. And if I have the time, I'll do it. If I don't, I won't.
Well, I appreciate it, Jerry. By the way, 81 going on 55. Don't kid anybody. We know.
It's only a number, right?
Only a number. There's only now, Jerry. There's no such thing as numbers. It's just
Yeah.
now.
Well, now's pretty good. So no complaints.
Thanks again, Jerry. We appreciate you, and we'll be in touch soon, buddy.
All right, buddy. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Yep. Thank you.